I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for Investmentpitch Media and FinTech News Network. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Tron Black, the developer from RavenCoin. Tron, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Ashton. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to learn a little bit about RavenCoin. The first time that I had heard of RavenCoin was because it was all over social media that everybody was mining RavenCoin. Is it an easy coin to mine, or was it lucrative, or is it lucrative to mine, and why did it get so popular?
It has been lucrative. I believe it is lucrative now. We changed an algorithm to remove some of the ASICs, so it should be lucrative now. It can be mined by anyone with a GPU. Originally, you could mine it with the CPU, but the GPUs came in about 3 weeks into it. And should be lucrative for GPU miners, which is mostly just a gaming rig or a machine you throw a bunch of video cards in.
Mm-hmm. Great. And for people that aren't familiar with RavenCoin, I know that it's based off of Bitcoin's code base, but you've added in a bunch more functions. One of them allowing you to create your own coins and from the blockchain. Could you explain a little bit more about why you chose to base it off Bitcoin and what is better than Bitcoin?
Sure. Bitcoin is just a really, really solid code base. So we started with that. We did a code fork, not a chain fork, but a code fork of Bitcoin. And we added a few things. We increased the issuance schedule. So it's 21 billion with a B coins. We increased the block issuance. So instead of 10 minutes, it's every 1 minute. And we added the ability to create assets, which is probably its most important feature. So the ability to create your own token. And we increased the block size as well. So it's 2 megabyte blocks instead of 1.
Very interesting.
So it's 20x as fast as Bitcoin.
Okay. A lot of people want to do similar things to Bitcoin, but they're afraid that either increasing the block size or making it confirm transactions faster is going to increase centralization or be the downfall of Bitcoin. Did you guys think of those issues, or what people would think of when you changed the code base with RavenCoin?
Absolutely, yeah. I was following those debates for 2 years. I actually know where they started, why they started, kind of where they ended up. We've also, kind of analyzed the research of what it takes to propagate a block across the network, those speeds, et cetera. And so, we're well within the limits. It's been running for almost 2 years with no problems at all. The centralization thing, I think, is really related to kind of if the miners have to store a very, very large chain, then they might not choose to do that, right, when they're mining. And so that can be a problem. But I mean, these days with a disk space, a terabyte of disk space being a $50 hard drive from Costco, really isn't that big a deal.
Totally. And you guys have done something really interesting with the consensus algorithm for the people that are mining, this X16R, as opposed to just basic proof of work. Could you talk a little bit about how you came up with this X16R, what makes it so interesting for the miners to mine, and why people are preferring that?
Sure. Yeah. So the goal with it was actually to make. We had to do two things. We had to have a new algorithm because we didn't want to launch a new baby chain where it could be dominated by SHA-256 ASIC miners. So that was one initial goal, and the other one was to kind of keep ASICs at bay, meaning we really didn't want custom hardware that could dominate. That does lead to centralization. Typically, big everything centralizes. So we basically, one of the ideas from Bruce Fenton was to change the algorithm like every month or something. It's, the problem with that, if you just completely change the algorithm and there's not miners for it, then you'd lose all the security that you had built up. So anyway, we were having this discussion with Joel Wade. He's a CTO at Managed Ventures. And what we came up with was a way to change the algorithm, not just every month, but every block. But basically by reordering the algorithms, the order that it goes through, the hashes go through the algorithms based on the previous block, which everybody has to know anyway, otherwise they can't attach that block to the next part. So we take the last 8 bytes of the previous block, which is essentially random because it was what the miners found last block. And we chop that up into 16 pieces, so each one being 4 bits, which is 16 choices. And so then we take 16 of those choices and take 16 algorithms, and it makes it random. And so we force the hash to a hash to a hash through that in that order. And so it changes every block. And then we had recently, meaning kind of last summer, we had some ASICs that did show up. And so we decided to make another change. So right now we're running X16R V2, where we just added some basically Tiger hash to some of those just to kind of obsolete the existing hardware.
Okay. So people that are mining, so with this consensus algorithm, it's supposed to be more decentralized. In one of the main senses is that people can't use ASICs to sort of control more of the network. Are there
Correct.
still mining pools like in Bitcoin where there's there's 4 or 5 different major groups that control it? And how easy is it to try and take control or do a Sybil attack or a 51% attack on RavenCoin?
Yeah, it'd be pretty tough at times. We've been between the fourth most difficult and the sixth most difficult coin to attack, which isn't too bad. We have, the mining distribution is ASIC or is GPUs, so those are kind of distributed worldwide. So we don't have large pools of farms. The pools are also pretty well distributed. We have lots of pools, some that we know about, some that are hidden. We don't know the names of them, but they have small percentages. So there's graphs that kind of show what our mining pool distribution is, and it's pretty good.
Very interesting. And although you guys are based off Bitcoin's code base, you changed a lot of the block sizes and the times and stuff. But because of this X16R consensus algorithm, it's not as centralized and as Bitcoin, and it also doesn't have the scalability issues that we see in Bitcoin, where there's only so much can be in a block and you have to wait 10 minutes. There's a huge backlog of transactions, and a lot of people, it's not really feasible to pay for a coffee or to pay with something with Bitcoin because you have to wait a long time for confirmations. Right. Can you talk a little bit about the scalability with RavenCoin? Is it anywhere near where you would consider needing to up it, or is it infinitely scalable and there will be no problem with the throughput as people use the transactions in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I wish I could say it was infinitely scalable, but it's not. None of them are. It's 20x the capacity of Bitcoin, and we can add to it from there. I don't think we're at the limits of what we can scale to just by increasing a block size, that kind of thing, or speeding something up. There are limits, though, to all of these, and it's how fast you can propagate the block, and that's multiplied. So it's a combination of both the block time, which we've made 10x, and the block size, which we've made 2x. So that's where we get the 20x scalability. It runs just fine. There's other experiments and other projects out there that are running at higher capacities from that. So those are things we can learn from and kind of know what the actual scalability limits are. As much as people tend to hate it, Bitcoin SD is one that's kind of pushing the limits on what's possible, and so we basically can learn from that and see what's possible.
Definitely. And you mentioned one of the other things that's different than Bitcoin is that you can create your own assets, and that seems huge for business adoption and being able to create tokens, similar to how Ethereum has grown the whole cryptocurrency industry with the ability to easily create assets. Can you talk a little bit about that part so far? Are there people creating RavenCoin assets? Is it helping with the adoption?
Yeah, so that was its original purpose. I mean, that's why we built it, was to build a platform for creating assets. We took if people are familiar, or viewers are familiar with either Counterparty, ERC20, Mastercoin, Open Assets, any of those. So really, there was some that were built on top of Bitcoin. We basically integrated the capabilities of those two together, and then we were able to remove some of the, I'll call it just clunkiness that came from having a second layer. And so, people have created assets. Over 20,000 assets have been created by different people. They have to have a unique name. So some people, I think, are just kind of name squatting on the assets, but there's also real projects that are, that have created tokens that represent various things. There's ones that represent wine futures, and that's wine that's in the barrel that's not ready to drink and is aging. And so those tokens represent that. That's Vincent wine that has that. And there's a bunch of projects. Best way to find them is our Raven Wiki. Just look up Raven Wiki, and we've got the projects that we kind of know about. We don't, nobody has to ask us permission to create an asset and do stuff. So we probably don't know about all of them. but people are creating assets, and the one we do know about, we put on the Raven Wiki. So, and if you want to go to ravencoin.asset-explorer.com, then you can see all the assets that are created. And because we have another capability that ERC20 doesn't have, which is the ability to attach metadata or the information about what the token is for, in that Explorer, if you see an IPFS link, you can click on that and it'll tell you, it may be something that's for sale. It may be a PDF of why the token exists. It might be a photograph. It can be anything. But that data is immutably attached to the token itself.
Very cool. I didn't know there was 20,000 assets already. That sounds like it's growing nicely. Do you guys provide, is it just like assets, or are there actually people creating full decentralized applications, and you guys have SDKs and developer communities? How big does this get?
Oh, we have a huge developer community. In fact, most of the work is actually done by the community. We have a Telegram. It's not run by us. We have Discord, not run by us. We have all those things, Twitter and things like that. Very big community, huge community in South Korea. I went to a huge event in South Korea. It was a meetup of over 1,000 people with a waiting list to get in the venue because they filled it up. Really popular over there. People are building second tier stuff. We're helping to build second tier stuff, meaning the APIs, the explorers, all of those exist. There's a lot going on that's kind of outside of just like the core protocol that we're working on.
That's great. And I read on the site that, it's open source, community driven, sort of all the attributes you would want of a fully decentralized project.
We didn't raise any money, so we didn't do an ICO. Every Raven has been mined into existence from day one. No developer set aside, no pre-mine, no master node that's paying developers or anything like that. We have a very generous backer in Medici Ventures, which is owned by Overstock.com, the furniture retailer, online retailer, and they're backing RavenCoin. Just some developers are working on the core protocol.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to ask you that, about like a RavenCoin Foundation that's able to sustain itself and to continue growing. So is there financial incentive and a return for Medici and Overstock to inject capital into RavenCoin?
I think Overstock or Medici owns some tokens, but there is no foundation yet. There is talk in the community of the community actually forming a foundation just to be able to kind of make sure that we have, just a place for people to come and to, kind of talk about and think about and vote on or whatever kind of future things. But it's not something that we've set up at this time. Yeah.
And
we're just working on the software.
Totally. And how far along would you say in terms of, fully ready for the public is the software? I know you've already been working on it for 2 years, but is there a bunch of things in the development roadmap that are really big that are still coming out in 2020, or what are you guys working on?
Yeah. So there are a few things coming out. It's fully baked for Raven, and it's trading on 40 different exchanges and all of that kind of thing. So the part that works like Bitcoin, like a currency or whatever, that's fully baked. Creating your own asset, creating the metadata about what your asset is, being able to create it on your own. You pay 500 Raven, create your own asset, fully baked, been working since November 5th of last year. It works great. 20,000 plus tokens have been created. You can go see all of those and see what they're about. There are a few more features that we're adding that are on testnet now. I would say they're fully done, but need more testing, about a month's worth of testing. We're going to run a bounty program just to let more eyeballs look at it, but that's messaging, the ability for the issuer to send a message to their token holders. Memos, which is the ability to put information, large pieces of information, like an entire document with every transfer of an asset or of Raven. Tags and restricted assets, which is really more for compliance. If you're creating like a securities token and you need to make sure that this thing isn't moving into places that you don't have KYC or accredited, and you as an issuer might be violating rules. We have a tool set that's being added into it. We wanted to do it second layer, but there's certain things like the ability to restrict a transfer to tagged addresses that we couldn't do second layer, because once you had it, you could transfer. It's just the way Bitcoin works and the way our tokens work. So we're adding this kind of additional feature, and then people can layer on top of that for all kinds of different things like voting and stuff.
Very cool. And what would you say is one of RavenCoin's biggest needs right now in terms of the growing? Is it more developers, more strategic partners, or just more people to actually use RavenCoin and use the assets?
Yeah, I would say one thing that we don't have, because of the way we were launched and we didn't do an ICO, we don't have a marketing department. So this type of thing right here is how people find out about it. It's a great issuance platform if you are looking at doing, kind of an STO or an IEO or something like that, to be able to issue your own token on it.
Mm-hmm.
Check with your attorneys about kind of the reason and rules and things around doing that. I don't want getting into trouble, but it's a great platform that will help you stay compliant with those rules. So it's that's what we're building in now, is that capability, and I think that's what people are waiting for. So it will compete with kind of the other platforms out there that help you stay compliant.
Awesome. And if people are interested in that kind of stuff, what's the best way to start following along and get involved, or just learn more about it when that comes out?
Yeah, so ravencoin.org and the Raven Wiki are kind of the two main places. From there, you can jump to the Discord, the Telegram. There's sub chat, sub channels within that if you're interested specifically in mining or issuance or tokens or whatever. There's people in there to help you. The community is amazing, friendly. There's been kind of like fights in some of the other communities. This one's been pretty open and super helpful. It's almost like the early days of Bitcoin where people were like, oh yeah, let me tell you about this kind of thing. So it's great.
That's great to hear. Well, I'll leave those links in the description box below. And that's all the time that we have today, Tron. But I appreciate you taking the time to talk about RavenCoin, and I'm looking forward to following up in the near future.
All right. Thanks, Ashton. Appreciate it.